Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tiffany. I hope you're all keeping well and safe, especially during this time, and of course maintaining your sanity, because one of the challenges of this coronavirus is trying to find the best ways to spend our time, but also find ideas on how to remain sane and not completely lose it, right? Now, I thought it would be interesting to discuss how being indecisive is ruining your life more than you think. Now, our lives are made up of a fragment of the decisions that we make, and even the ones we don't make, because by default, you are making a decision. Now, I used to be super indecisive. Now, picture this. 6 years ago when I worked for my previous company, I used to not even able to decide what to wear or what to have for lunch, to the point where it used to warrant making a call to my sister and say, Daphne, what do I wear today? Daphne, what do I have for lunch? And imagine this, right? I had an hour for lunch, but I would spend 20 to 25 minutes of that deciding what to have. So simply cutting short my own break because I couldn't make a decision. Now, it all sounds pretty silly and harmless, and I did used to hide behind the excuse of being a Libra, right? And you think, well, Libras are indecisive, I can't help it this way. But actually, being indecisive has much more negative impact than what we realize. Now, consider this. It's the root of stagnation. Because if you simply cannot choose whether you go left or right, you're not making any progress in life. And secondly, if you cannot make decisions on the small matters, like what to have for breakfast, do I have eggs? Do I have muesli? Do I have porridge? Then how are you going to decide on the bigger matters of life? Like, what are my priorities? What are my values? Who do I marry? These are important matters. And I think when you begin to really consider the whole nature of being indecisive, you realize that there are a couple of issues that it's not always clear. One of that is that we are indecisive because we are factoring other people's opinions into the equation. So, for example, throughout our lives, we're always living under the burden of other people's expectations, the expectations of our parents, the expectations from our cultural norms, and trying to balance that against who you are, your right to evolve and become your most highest self, can be very challenging. And because we naturally feel the need to please, or we want to be loved and accepted, it's very hard then to decide what is the best way to move forward with my life. But sometimes you really have to consider the fact that when you're on your deathbed, which decisions will you regret not making the most? Sure, your parents might want you to become a lawyer or become a doctor, but if you feel that you're much more of a creative soul, you want to write music or you want to write poetry, then you need to really think, what is my most authentic self and which decisions will help me to make progress towards that? Because you simply cannot please everyone. It's not possible. You have to realize that making decisions will mean that you do, some people will not be happy with what you choose to do. Now, another thing to consider is that indecisiveness is often masked by fear. It's not that you're dumb, it's not that you're demotivated, it's not that you don't have as much talent as everybody else, it's simply that you are afraid. You're afraid of making mistakes, you're afraid of getting it wrong, you're afraid of being criticized, you're afraid of becoming a failure, you're afraid of trying something new, of coming out of your comfort zone. But one thing we have to understand, that fear is a natural emotion. Fear it's usually the beginning of greatness. And one thing I've realized works for me is to study fear. I study fear myself. I study fear in other people. I study literature on fear. How have people who have achieved great things, how have they overcome their fear? And also realize that fear is actually quite an exciting emotion when you think about it in a different way. So there was a time when I made a decision that I wanted to become a better public speaker. But every time I would put my hands up to ask a question in sort of a big group, my heart would feel like it wants to burst out of my chest. But then I had to recognize that that's actually a good thing, because it means that I was about to do something that was not natural to me, but I needed to do that for the sake of becoming the person I had potential to become. So I learned to embrace that feeling of, nerve, to embrace that nerves in me. And I think that really did make a difference. And also another thing to really think about in the whole process of making decisions is that standing still is preventing your growth. Now, sometimes we feel that we're biding time by not making a decision. But when you think about it in this way, right, it's a crazy example, but if you stayed in your house for a whole month and you thought, I'm not going to do anything, I'm going to just spend some time analyzing what I am going to do, the whole world is still be moving forward. And by doing that, you are standing still. Furthermore, think about this, right? Parliament is still going to pass laws. Apple is still going to release another iPhone. The stock market is still going to rise and fall, regardless of whatever you're choosing to do. So you have to understand that it's only in progress. It's only when you take action. It's only when you're moving forward, when you're actually doing something, that you can grow as a person. I think about the words of Theodore Roosevelt, right? Who talked about the man in the arena, the quote about the man in the arena. Now, of course, it's safe and secure to stand still, to not make a decision, to play it safe. But when you consider that in time, what happens is that you will neither know victory nor defeat. You will not be able to actually become the man in the arena to make decisions and be the lead person in the story of your own life. Rather, you're just a spectator, and that's not a way to live. That's not a way to live, to simply stand in the corner with the timid souls. So, I challenge you today to think about this. Do you recognize that you are very indecisive? And do you recognize that being indecisive is actually holding you back? Then there are ways you can counter it. One of that is to accept that by the virtue of choosing one path, you will be sacrificing the other path. That's just the nature of life. And it's only through choosing something that you can actually evolve, you can learn, you can realize whether it's the right decision to make. And also you can help yourself in this decision-making process by seeking advice from other people who have maybe walked a similar path. And most importantly, you need to learn to trust yourself. Learn to trust that even if everything goes wrong and everything falls apart, you will find your way back. Okay? Now, always remember that life rewards those who live intentionally.